excited and also kind of scared to be here. Yeah, so I have been working on remote teams for the last 5 years or so, and usually when we have a break on my remote teams, after that we do some kind of warm-up activity. So my ask for you right now is give me a thumbs up if you have someone that you have learned from in the last couple of days. All right, awesome, thank you very much. Cool, all right, so let's get started. So my talk is called Growing Future Leaders, so this is what it's going to be about. I'm going to walk you through the process of how my team got from the structure where it was me and 12 direct reports, and I was stretched, honestly, like a little too thin, and people were not getting enough attention on their development goals, to a process where hopefully, like, okay, I'm thinking that everyone have someone focused on their goals. I have a more realistic people management workload, and I also have 2 successors, so people that are equipped to take over more responsibilities whenever necessary. I'll walk you through the whole process, and I will share some lessons that I learned along the way. All right, so it all started in spring of 2022. I have been a manager for 2 years at that point, and I grew my team from 6 to 12 people. I was doing the people management responsibilities, I was a scrum master for the team, and I was also driving the business outcomes for 3 products that we were working on. We also had the hiring pause just announced at Red Hat, so that meant that whatever offers were already made, like we were keeping a promise on them, but whatever other hiring we wanted to do, we weren't able to do that anymore. And I was in the process of having the career conversations with some of my people, with all of my people. And one of the engineers asked me, what can I start doing now so that I can become a leader later? So at the time, I already knew of some people on my team who were interested in people management, but nobody was really actually like ready to move forward with that. So after we wrapped up our one-to-one, my first thought was, so what do I do now? Resign? Yeah, the problem with that option was that, first and foremost, I really like my team and my job, so I didn't really want to give it up. And even if somebody inherited like a team of 11 people as a first-time manager, that would be super hard. You know, that would be as if they were playing a game for the first time and already had the highest difficulty settings. So together with my manager, we started brainstorming about the things that we can do. Here were our options. First, we could as a first option, we were considering splitting the team because we had 3 products at the time, so maybe we could establish a clear scope for somebody and get either a peer, a manager for me, or a reporting manager that would report to me. The problem was that the team was closely coupled, so that meant that of 3 projects, each engineer probably had the knowledge of about 2 of them. And it wouldn't be really easy to do this split functionally to give someone a particular scope. And at the same time, we had the hiring pause, so even if somebody took over and became a manager, there were no option to backfill, and with us needing to continue to deliver, that would be challenging. All right, and the second option that we had is while working on option number 1, so figuring out what the functional split for the team would be, and also I forgot to mention that if we were to go with option number 1, until we figure out the split, everyone would still struggle, there would be, they wouldn't get enough attention. So we were thinking of option number 2. So while we're figuring out the split, let's create a team lead role. You will say, team lead? Isn't that the same as tech lead? No, not exactly. So I had a team that was really, that had mostly senior and principal level people. So everyone was already kind of leading particular features whenever necessary. So there wasn't really a need to create a tech lead role. A team lead would be someone who is taking over some of the people management responsibilities from me and inherits basically a couple of people to kind of gain the experience of management before they actually become a manager, plus hopefully have a way back if they end up not liking it. So we settled on option 2, and now we need to figure out how to actually make this work. So we made a decision, and now the questions came. Who will the team leads be? What exactly will they do? Whom will they lead at all? So I've been through a similar transition when I first became a manager, so some of the parts were pretty clear, but there were still some things that we needed to figure out. So here's what we did. Just a note, in the next slides, you will see numbers next to steps, but they're just there for structure. You don't really need to follow the steps in this particular order. I think some of those things can be shuffled around pretty easily. Okay, so the first step was choosing the people that will become the team leads. First and foremost, I wanted to have somebody, I didn't want to burden someone with people management responsibilities if they weren't really interested in that. So I looked at my team, and that immediately narrowed my search, or like my number of candidates, from 12 to 3. Next, I wanted to make sure that the change will be accepted by the team, so I started thinking, are these people trusted by the team? Have I seen them help and mentor others? Also, because of the pause in hiring, and because we couldn't like backfill whoever became a team lead, I had to consider the impact that the role change is going to have on the team's ability to deliver. Can we upskill someone on the team to make up for the lost IC productivity of a team lead? And that's one of the candidates that I had stood out. So he had a high impact role, and it would take someone well over a year of upskilling to get to his level. And if I shifted some of his focus to people leadership, the whole team would slow down at this point. If we could get additional headcount, one more person with a similar skill set would be able to make up for that loss of productivity. But unfortunately, that wasn't an option. So at this time, this candidate was out for overrun. And here's where we come to the first lesson learned. Don't make promises that you can't keep. So let me give you some context. With this candidate, we last talked about, like, with two of the candidates that I had, I already knew that they were interested in people management, but with this candidate, I think we had the conversation only like a year before I was going on this journey of like creating the team lead role. So without really like giving it a second thought, like immediately after I had the idea of creating this team lead role, I came to a one-to-one with him and said like, hey, I'm thinking of creating a team lead role. Like, what do you think? Is this something that you would be interested in? And yeah, we talked about it. He said he will need to think about it. And only after that, I started establishing the criteria and realized that he's actually not the right person for the role at this time. So on our next one-to-one, he brought up the topic himself. And he said, yes, I would love to become a team lead and a manager. And I was like, yikes. Okay, now I have to tell him that, you know, this is not going to work out this time. And yeah, it was an awkward conversation, to be honest. So yeah, he was not the candidate for this role at this time. Later on, I realized that the reasons why he said that he was interested was not as much because of the people aspect of the role, but he wanted to have more impact. So we later found more opportunities for him to kind of have more impact in his current role and have more visibility within the organization. So it kind of worked out, but still, if I were to go through this process again, and if I were to like have this conversation again to gauge someone's interest, I would probably frame it as a general career conversation versus it being, you know, hey, I'm giving the full context and like saying like, hey, would you be interested in that? That was not a good idea. All right, so now that I had two people, I actually chose both of them to become team leads. It was time to decide who will be the people that they will actually lead. It's important to mention here again that my team consists of mainly like senior people and principal people. So basically like many folks are already seasoned engineers. I had to be mindful of how the new leads would be able to help their teams. So I decided to keep 4 of the most senior people as my direct reports. The other 6 lined up pretty nicely to team leads. So one of the leads has already worked closely with 3 people on a project, so they trusted her and they had a lot to learn from her. Another lead was our only quality engineer, and he got the people that were interested in improving our developer tooling and increasing their scope beyond the initial role that they had. I didn't have to worry about this when I was choosing the teams, but just a general recommendation that I wouldn't recommend giving your team leads anyone who is like in a phase of like low performance, because people that are low performers, they usually have a lot going on already at this point, so you don't want to introduce another change for them to handle before you actually figure out the problems that they're having. So we started with the structure where I had 2 team leads and each of them got 3 ICs, with the assumption that like if you ever have like low performers, you can just handle the problem, get them to improve, and then after that like hand them over to a team lead if you'd like. All right, so that is settled. I have the leads, I have the people that are ready, like I have the people that I think will be good for those leads. Now comes the time to prepare the team for the transition. So now is the time to give your leads the context and ask if they're interested. So that was the first step that I did. After I got their agreement, I talked to them about the potential team structure, the people that they will inherit. And next, I proceeded to have conversations with the people gaining a lead. So I gave them the context. This is what I'm thinking about doing. This is how you're going to benefit from this. This is who I'm thinking your lead is going to be. What do you think? Luckily, like everyone was pretty much aligned, so I didn't have to like make any adjustments. But I think this step is necessary anyways to make sure that people know what's happening, and basically, if they have any concerns, they have a way to kind of raise their hand and say like, yeah, this is not going to work out for me. Another option, if you're working in a larger org where you're introducing like multiple team leads, so like 3+ and like many teams, you can ask, you can give people a list of the team leads, and you can ask like, what is your order of preference? That will be like, you don't have to necessarily follow that, because like if everyone wants to go to like one particular team lead, that's not going to work out, but still it's a nice option for people to be heard before the change actually happened. All right, and the third thing that we needed to do was define the clear responsibilities. So ideally, when change happens, everyone should know that if they have this particular problem, this is a lead problem, and if they have this other problem, this is a manager problem. So like I go to my manager for this. This is the initial responsibility split that we had. So here you can see that like there were some things that we were doing together, some things that leads took over, and some things that I did as a manager. So the leads took over the weekly one-to-ones, mentoring and coaching of their new teams. They also became the first point of contact for blockers. So like if the engineer already had an idea who to contact, like to get unblocked, like that's fine. But if they didn't know, they can contact the lead and ask for guidance, and like the lead would be the one finding like where to move forward. And because of these new responsibilities, they got the reduced IC workload, so it was not expected anymore that they're going to deliver at their full capacity as engineers. Me as a manager, I switched to one-to-ones monthly with the people that gained the lead. And I also left the door open to have the calls ad hoc whenever they have any feedback or questions, things like that. Then I also kept the responsibilities around like any sort of bureaucracy, so like PTO approvals, writing promotion documentation, relocations, etc. And financial topics, that is honestly something that you can expand to a team lead at some point, but because of the organizational structure, we weren't able to do that initially. So salary adjustments, bonuses, and expenses were still on me. And the things that we did together were the quarterly performance and development conversations. That is something that we do at Red Hat, and also hiring. So in hiring, it was basically me and the team lead defining the role, and then doing the interviews together, like doing the technical, like Write for Red Hat round of interview together. All right. Okay, and that's where we come to lesson learned number 2, getting the leads involved in the process. So because I already have been a team lead before, and I've gone through a similar process, so like basically being an engineer, getting promoted to team lead at some point, and then becoming a manager, I already had some idea about how things are supposed to be done. So when I was talking to my team leads, I was saying, I'm going to do A, B, and C, and like, I feel like maybe I didn't really like invite feedback. I was just kind of like telling them, I'm going to do this. And yeah, it was later that I found out that one of my team leads was initially concerned about me continuing to have one-to-ones with people on their team, even though it was now monthly versus weekly. It did work out for us, and I really think that having skip-level one-to-ones is a valuable practice no matter which level you're on. But this made me realize later that I could have involved the team leads more. After all, this change affects them directly, so they should have a say in it. All right, so now that we have figured out like who's going to be the leads, who are going to be the teams, who's going to do what, one of the prominent questions that my leads were asking me throughout the process was what skills do I need to be able to succeed in this role? Which brings us to the next step. All right, we need to give people the skills that they need to be able to succeed in this role. And I think that was mentioned by a few speakers before me as well today. Okay, so first of all, if you have some kind of leadership training in a company, you can definitely make use of that. So, but if you don't, then here are some trainings that I recommend. So giving and receiving feedback is one that is prominent, and also some sort of conflict management training. The one that we have at Red Hat and the one that I really like is called Crucial Conversations. It's available externally as well. The training doesn't have to be in person. Most companies, especially like if you are constrained on budget, so most companies have subscriptions to some kind of learning tool such as Udemy, LinkedIn Learning, O'Reilly, etc. So make use of the materials available. Next, you want to help your team leads find a mentor, because no matter how much trust you build with these people, there's still going to be there are still going to be some topics where they will not feel confident to talk to you, or they will need somebody else's opinion. Plus, having a mentor is also helpful in terms of learning from others' management styles because they are now establishing their own style. And lastly, for the first few weeks at least of basically like they're going to be, the leads are going to be a little overwhelmed by the amount of like new things that they are going to need to do. So you want to give them some kind of practical guidelines. So this is how you do one-to-ones, this is how you provide feedback and things like that. And I found the book of Become an Effective Software Engineering Manager by Dr. James Stanier especially helpful for that. For the questions that come up later and some practical advice, you can also refer them to leaddev.com. That's been my go-to resource when I was just getting started as well. Also, and probably this is one of the most important part of the preparation, you want to make sure that you pass the information about the teams to the leads that are going to inherit them. Obviously, they have already worked together and they have an idea of what it's like to be peers, but at the same time, they don't know what the goals of this new person are going to be, or like of the person that they're going to work with, and they don't know, like they might not know some things in general. So the things that you want to pass over will be some performance and development goals. I think that's the most obvious one. Also some things that you recently worked on together. So something that might not be listed as a performance goal, but something that you've been working on. For example, for me, one of the things that I had to like tell like a lead was that I had an engineer who wasn't really confident like speaking up in large meetings. So he would reach out to someone asking questions afterwards, but he didn't do it like during the call. And that actually made us make worse decisions because he had some really good ideas. So that was something that I was encouraging him to do during our one-to-ones. And now that he was gaining a lead, it was important that the lead also knew that and continued encouraging this person to speak up and like build up their confidence. Things that you don't want to share will be any sort of confidential information. So that will be like their family situation or I don't know, just basically anything that is not for you to share in the first place. And also, you probably don't want to share finances initially, but that depends on your organization and how you set things up. All right, and after all of this is handed over, we can finally like make the changes take the effect and send out the announcement. Okay, so I'm not including the full email that we had like in this announcement because that was very long, but I'm including the approximate structure. So you want to tell people why the change is happening, what's happening, the updated team structure. You can include the diagram if you want, you don't have to. And like the responsibilities, how the split is going to happen. Also give some congratulations and reassurance that these people are going to do great. And also keep the door open for questions if anyone has them. Ideally, this announcement shouldn't be a surprise because you've already talked to the leads, you've already talked to the team, so this is just in place to make the changes take effect at this point. And here you can also see the structure that I ended up with. So as I said, 4 most senior individual contributors ended up reporting to me, and the leads each inherited 3 people. All right, so now comes the fun part, seeing all of this in action. And yeah, unfortunately, like you will think, yeah, finally, like awesome, like I'm done, you know, let's just see how this goes. Your work is not done yet. Your team has to get used to the new structure. You have to adjust if necessary. So supporting your team and the leads after the transition is crucial. All right, so in the first week after introducing the team leads, you want to follow, like you want to make sure that you do 2 things, that you are available for the team and that you check in regularly. First and foremost, in terms of availability, immediately after the announcement, have the leads schedule their first one-to-ones with their teams to get introduced like in this new format and set some expectations. You will also want to reschedule your one-to-ones with the people that are now skip levels to the cadence that you agreed upon. You will also want to keep some time open in your calendar, especially if you have different time zones, like keep some time open in different time zones to have some ad hoc calls if anyone has some feedback they want to provide or ask questions. Basically, like if they're not sure about anything, you want to make sure that they have the time to ask you about this. And also you will want to expand your one-to-ones with leads because now you are focusing not just on their personal development, but you're also focusing on helping them help their teams. You can also continue to ask teams for the feedback and suggestions. You can do that through retrospectives. You can do that through some kind of like forums if you'd like, if people are not comfortable talking in public forums and things like that. And yeah, the first few weeks are not going to be immediately easy for the leads. But after they get the gist of it, like I would say like about like 6 to 9 months, like they will be super comfortable with the responsibilities that they have. They might start asking you, what's next? And as they grow, you have two options. Like if you have an option to get them promoted, sure, like go for it. Unfortunately, like that wasn't how things worked out on my team at the time. So I had to figure out some of the stretch goals. So these are just the suggestions, but I'm sure you can find some more that will work for your team. First and foremost, we expanded the performance reviews, so I delegated the goal setting to my team leads. Instead of me, like basically I gave them the team goals, and then they worked together with their individual contributors to figure out like what these goals will translate to these particular people. You will also want to get them, you might also want to get them visibility on a higher level. So invite them to the meetings where you are as a manager and where they will be as a manager eventually as well. So quarterly business reviews, project calls, leadership calls, things like that. Basically, get them access to things they'll be part of as a manager already. All right, and you might also want to open up the salary structure and collaborate on financial decisions, if that is possible within your organization, because at some point they will get these responsibilities anyway. All right, so I have had the structure on my team for a little bit over a year, and I can say that these are the outcomes that we got. So for the team members, they finally had someone who has more focused attention on their goals. So I was able to focus on my people, and the team leads were focusing on their people. For those who gained the lead, they got someone who is more hands-on to discuss both technical and people topics with. For the leads, it was an opportunity to explore management before fully committing, and also they got the skills to be successful in the role when they finally transition. For me as a manager, as I already said, the more manageable people management workload and experience mentoring leaders. And most importantly, I have the successors, so when it's time for me to move on to the next opportunity, I know that the team will be in good hands. All right, and this is pretty much the end, but if there are only 3 things that you should take away from this talk, it would be this. First of all, you want to be intentional in the way that you set up your team structure and in the way that you communicate it. So this way the team knows what to expect from the move and you can get people on board from the start. Secondly, you want to set your leads up for success by giving a clear scope and introducing the responsibilities gradually. They have a lot to learn, and especially if they're leading for the first time. So give them the tools to do it well. And lastly, be available to help and adjust when necessary. Remember, the end goal is to create a structure that works for the whole team, so make sure that they know that and that they are supported. All right, that's all I have. The slides are not switching. That's all I have. If you have some questions, feel free to find me at the office hours. And if you have some advice or experience to share about splitting the teams functionally, I'm also happy to listen. Thank you.